What's up, Mets fans? Welcome back to the channel. I hope you all are having a great start to your day. I know I am, because I absolutely love discussing the New York Mets and their potential trade targets leading up to the 2021 MLB trade deadline on July 30th. And as we've discussed in previous videos over the past week, the Mets have been showing interest in some players. And if there's one player that they've been connected to over the past half year even, it is in fact, yes, Kris Bryant, if you didn't know by now. And over the past couple hours, according to Ken Rosenthal for The Athletic, came out with an article stating that the Chicago Cubs are very much sellers at this year's trade deadline and have in fact been connected to the New York Mets. So that's what we'll be breaking down in today's video. Everything there's to know about this article, its connection with the New York Mets, and especially a guy like Kris Bryant and some others that very well could find themselves potentially landing in Queens by the deadline, and so much more. So as always, make sure you stay all the way until the end video. Follow the details and all my thoughts on this article and its connection right now with the Mets and the potential there is. And if you guys end up enjoying this kind of Mets content and you want to see more great Mets content like this, please make sure to smash that like and subscribe button, sharing this video with your friends, upon the notification bell, all those great things. Thank you so much for the continued support, guys. Now let's jump right into today's video. As many of you know, I was a huge advocate for the Chicago Cubs to be sellers at this year's trade deadline, even before the season began. I saw too many flaws in their lineup that just did not reach the means of them being an actual contender this year. And lo and behold, while they have had some highs this season, exceeding expectations the first couple months in, and we're even sitting first in the NL Central for a little bit, the past 2 weeks at the time recording this have been telling of where they stand, not just now, but going forward, losing 12 of their last 13 games, including an 11-game losing streak, and are now not just 2 games below 500, but 9.5 games out of the lead in the NL Central. So Jed Hoyer has made it clear we are in fact sellers now, and while it won't be a traditional rebuild, we are looking to part ways with our rentals and guys that we know are not going to stay with this club after the season, more than likely. Highlighted is a guy, of course, like Kris Bryant, and his current connection to the New York Mets has been going on for the past half year, but the connection now states in the article that the Cubs have been scouting some low-A prospects in Port St. Lucie for the Mets recently, and they're trying to get a feel for teams that they know could be interested in the services of a Bryant or other rentals on this club to help them in a win now stage. And they are exactly right. So there's a current connection with them now, and I assure you that the Mets have, I'm assuming, have been in some contact, if at all, with the Cubs as of recent, and things will only continue to progress leading up to the trade deadline, if not sooner. And I think you all have a strong grasp of what Kris Bryant should bring to the New York Mets if they in fact land him, as we have discussed him literally more often than not over the past half year. But in case you're a little new here, Kris Bryant is kind of a good player. The rental in his final year of his contract at $19.5 million. He both not just third baseman, but left fielder. You can play center, right, first base. He can basically play anywhere. He's been utilized in every position, it seems, outside shortstop, I would assume, for the Chicago Cubs this year to show that versatility, flexibility. And Bryant has a strong bat. He was off to an amazing start this season, batting right around. He's currently at 268 on his average. He has a 349 on base percentage and 847 OPS with 16 home runs, 43 RBIs, and 4 stolen bags. That is good for him, gaining an all-star appearance for the 4th time in his career, and he would bring so much for the Mets. So the question is, what are you going to have to give up to land a guy like Kris Bryant? Well, it really goes in hand with if this is in fact going to be just Kris Bryant, or if this is going to be some other players, because as we know by now, the Mets are not just looking to potentially upgrade third base and to have a big bat like Bryant, which would help them tremendously, but they're also looking for starting pitching help, potentially bullpen help as well. Everything to really round out this roster, and they definitely need starting pitching help with Joey Lucchesi out of the year. David Pearson still hurt, uncertainties with Carlos Carrasco and what he will bring, and Noah Syndergaard when he is hopefully back with this team before the season ends. The assumption is around September. But if you don't just get a guy like Kris Bryant, and according to this article is also stated that if a deal is happening, they're more than likely interested in packaging a guy like Bryant with, say, some other pieces, potentially rentals as well, to get better value on their side and also just help the needs of a team that's looking for multiple aspects of their lineup to be addressed. So now let's not just talk about Kris Bryant, let's also talk about some starting pitching help. And yes, you can look at a guy like Kyle Hendricks, we have discussed on the channel in the past, but he still has multiple years on his contract, 4 years at $55 million. Hendricks, now in his 30s, is having a strong season no less at a 3.83 year rate, a 10.4 win-loss record, and a 1.25 whip. But realistically, if you're going to get a guy like Kyle Hendricks, who has plenty of years left on his contract, you're going to have to give up a significant haul to land Kris Bryant versus what you would originally have to do for him strictly being a rental, where the asking price isn't nearly as high as what it was back in the offseason, unless a bidding war happens. Because if you guys don't know, according to numerous reports, the Chicago Cubs were looking for Francisco Alvarez in a deal for Bryant, strictly Bryant as a rental, and Alvarez is the stud #1 prospect for the New York Mets, who has been absolutely killing it in Double-A Bennington this year. year. So getting into, is Kyle Hendricks a great fit? As much as I would love him, I think a better value pick for the Mets that could help them this year is another rental, that being in Zach Davies, who was acquired by the Cubs going into this year, originally from the Padres as part of that Yu Darvish deal. And Davies has had a solid season. While he hasn't been anything crazy, he has a 4.28 ERA, a 5.5 win and loss record, a 1.42 whip, but he has 1 year left on his $8.63 million contract, so he's a rental. You don't have to give up too much to get a guy like him in a deal with Bryant, and he's going to bring stability to your rotation that the Mets absolutely need right now, and he has a sub-3 ERA over his past 12 to 13 games, so he has been getting the job done just fine, and he is a guy that I'm sure the Mets will be looking at as a potential fit for at least the remainder of the season to help them down the stretch. They need a veteran, and Zach Davies really checks off all the boxes for what they could be looking for now, with guys like hopefully Carlos Carrasco back after the All-Star break, and then you could figure out what you're going to do with Syndergaard should he be healthy and ready to go down the stretch in the beginning of September. But again, that's still a tall task at this point in time. So you have a Zach Davies, you have a Kris Bryant, and now you're looking at, could they be looking for anything else? Sure, they could. The Mets are of course going to be looking to add possibly at least one reliever at the trade deadline, so you have to look at what has been noted in this article for some rentals or guys with at least only 1 more year on his contract, and no one stands out more to me than Andrew Chafin, who has been an absolute stud. The southpaw, 30-plus-year-old veteran for the Chicago Cubs this year is only on a 2-year contract right now, a 1-year contract at $2.25 mil, but there is a 2022 mutual option at $5.25 million. So essentially just a 1-year contract right now for a guy like Chafin, who has been dominant with a 1.43 ERA, a 0.1 win-loss record, and has a 0.74 whip. That is absolutely fantastic. The Mets only have one southpaw in their bullpen by the name of Aaron Loop, who has a sub-2 ERA on the year. He's been fantastic, but never hurts to have more than one, especially in lefty-lefty matchups. And the Mets could find themselves down the stretch in key games, even potentially playoff games, where they're facing more lefty-heavy lineups. So keep that in mind. Andrew Chafin would be a great get and is a guy that you're not going to have to give up a haul for. So realistically, if the Mets go for Kris Bryant himself, they should not have to give up too much. When I'm looking at prospects, I don't even know if I'm really looking at Ronnie Mauricio like I was a couple months ago. A part of me feels like the Mets could get a deal done for a guy like Bryant without giving up a top 3 prospect in their organization. You're looking at guys like Mark Vientos and some others that are currently in Port St. Lucie that maybe they're scouting, but in a bigger deal per se, where you're going to have not just a Kris Bryant, but potentially a Zach Davies and even Andrew Chafin, where you basically check off all the boxes of what you're trying to address at the trade deadline. Yes, it's going to take a bigger deal, but it's still nothing too drastic. I'm looking at potentially a guy like David Peterson, who could help their rotation. I've been saying this a lot. I think if the Mets add a starting pitcher, David Peterson could be on his way out at the right price, given he's only 25 years of age, has plenty of control on his contract, and would be on the outside looking in currently of the rotation. And with the Cubs in a retool/rebuild, they could use a guy like Peterson down the stretch going forward. Then if you look at some other pieces on this team, JD Davis stands out to me. Yes, he has little to no value given his injuries, but there just won't be room for him really on this roster. And I doubt the Mets would be getting rid of other bench pieces, and I doubt that they would be really sold on the notion of having JD strictly off the bench going forward for the Mets. I think that he would be part of this deal, would ultimately go to the Cubs right away to either be a utility guy or play some third base, depending on how a guy like Patrick Wisdom is doing, who has had a stellar rookie year. Then you're looking at other pieces as well that could be middle to the pack prospects, but nothing too drastic where it's going to hurt them long term. Again, as I've said with my other trade videos regarding the Mets and the guys are showing interest in, they're not going to give up the entire farm. While it might be ideal to really go in for a guy, especially if there's a bidding war, the Mets are very strategic. They're going to be smart about the moves that they make, and I assure you they're not going to really overspend on a guy unless they're absolutely certain that they can keep them long term. And Kris Bryant is a guy that I'm sure the Mets would very much like to lock up long term after the season. There is no guarantee. They don't need to per se. They can go a Manny Machado route with the Dodgers a couple years ago, where they got him as a rental, helped him out in the playoffs, and then he ended up going elsewhere to the Padres on a massive contract in free agency. But Bryant, if you're going to go after him, you shouldn't have to give up too much, as long as you're not in a huge bidding war with other teams, whether it possibly be the Braves, the Nationals. I doubt the Nationals will really go hard after him, but you never know with this NL East still being fairly up in the air for other teams below us. The Mets have just consistently been the better team this year, even with all their adversity. Some other teams around the league as well, but no less, the Mets have all the potential to make a deal done, and I love the idea of it not even just being Kris Bryant, but also addressing other needs in the lineup like a Zach Davies, like Andrew Chafin, and some others. So Mets fans, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. How do you like the idea, the potential of Kris Bryant and potentially some other pieces pieces landing with the New York Mets by the trade deadline? Do you think that the likelihood is now increased the way that I feel it has, given the reports stating that the Mets have been a team that has been scouted by the Cubs and their prospects, and knowing that the Cubs are now in sell mode, which was the biggest uncertainty I had over the past month with if the Cubs would be willing to give up a guy like Bryant, because we know the Mets are not going to give up a Francisco Alvarez, no, they're not going to give up a Brett Beatty, the way that the Cubs were being stubborn in the offseason. Now this might come back to bite them, knowing that the value will be fairly lower now, even with him being an all-star, and depending on how big of a Bane War this is, this could be for the Mets taking, should they get him and some other pieces potentially at the right price. So let me know your thoughts down below, guys, and if you ended up enjoying this kind of Mets content, you want to see more great Mets content like this, please make sure to smash that like and subscribe on, sharing this video with your friends, put on the notification bell, all those great things. Thank you so much for the continued support, guys. All my Mets fans watching this right now at the time of recording this, I will be in attendance for the Mets game tomorrow against the Pirates, which will be a doubleheader. I might be in attendance for the following day as well, the Sunday game if it doesn't get rained out, and I also will be in attendance for a game between the Pirates and the Mets in Pittsburgh next Saturday, which should be the same day that I know the 7 line are going to. So if you guys are going to the game, let me know. We'll try to meet up and I'll get to meet a lot of you guys. But thank you again, guys. Let me know your thoughts down below, and let's go Mets, baby.